The soup hit Nia's chest before she even saw the bowl move. Boiling tomato broth soaked through her navy blue dress while 25 dinner guests froze around Beverly's mahogany table. Camille did not apologize, and when Deshawn looked at his burned wife and muttered, "You had that coming," Nia simply set down her spoon and glanced toward the kitchen doorway. Some women scream when they are broken. Some cry. And some sit so still, so quiet, that the whole room understands something terrible is about to unfold. The broth was still steaming on the front of Nia Whittaker's dress when the room finally remembered to breathe. 25 people sat beneath Beverly Whittaker's dining room chandelier, and not a single one of them moved toward her. The candles kept flickering as if violence had not just passed across the table. The fine china remained untouched. Crystal glasses caught the warm light and threw tiny rainbows against the white linen tablecloth. Above all of it hung the thick, peppery smell of tomato broth, basil, garlic, and heat clinging to the air like a witness that refused to leave. Nia's skin burned. It was not a dramatic burn at first. Not the kind that sends the body into full alarm immediately. It began as a bright, spreading shock across her chest and collarbone, then sharpened into pain as the soup soaked deeper through the fabric. The neckline of her dress stuck to her skin. A thin trail of broth slid beneath the collar and down toward her ribs. She could feel it moving, hot and humiliating, as if the shame itself had temperature. Camille stood at the far end of the table with the empty bowl still in her hand. Her fingers curled around the rim like she was holding a trophy. She had not been on the guest list. Everybody in that room knew it. Beverly had walked her through the front door 40 minutes earlier, arm in arm, heels clicking across the hardwood floor, and introduced her to the room as the sound's close friend. Close friend. She said the words the way a woman says something she has rehearsed in the mirror, with a bright smile and careful timing, daring anyone at the table to question her authority inside her own house. A few of the older aunts had exchanged looks across the centerpiece. Uncle Lionel had paused with his glass halfway to his mouth. Cousin Tasha had leaned toward her sister and whispered something behind a hand. But no one challenged Beverly Whittaker at her own annual dinner. In Beverly's house, Beverly controlled the weather. Nia had noticed everything. She noticed the way Beverly seated Camille directly across from her, not beside Deshawn, not safely near the end of the table, but across like a mirror meant to make Nia measure herself and come up short. She noticed the way Camille kept glancing at Deshawn with a softness that did not belong to someone who was just a friend. She noticed the way Deshawn did not correct the look, did not shift away from it, did not even pretend embarrassment. Nia noticed all of it. And she said absolutely nothing. The dinner had started stiff. Polite words passed around the table the way bread was passed, out of obligation, not hunger. Beverly's silverware gleamed beside each plate. Her white linen napkins were folded into stiff fans. The dining room smelled of roasted chicken, tomato bisque, lemon polish, and the expensive perfume Beverly wore whenever she wanted the room to remember who had the money and who had been allowed into it. Then Camille leaned forward. She tilted her head to one side. She smiled sweetly. "You know," she said, voice smooth enough to make the insult slide before it cut, "some women just don't know when a man has outgrown them." She said it like she was offering wisdom. Like it was advice between girlfriends. Like Nia should nod, thank her, and step aside from her own marriage with a napkin folded politely in her lap. Nia did not respond. She did not blink. She did not tighten. She did not give Camille a single thing to push against. And maybe that was what enraged Camille most. People who come prepared to humiliate you need your reaction to complete the scene. They need the tears, the raised voice, the trembling hand, the broken dignity. Without it, their cruelty just hangs there, exposed, ugly, and finished. Camille kicked up the soup bowl and threw it. The broth hit Nia square in the chest and splashed upward across her collarbone and the side of her neck. It burst through the fabric immediately. Nia's skin turned red beneath the soaked dress. Her breath caught, but she did not make a sound. That was not what made the room gasp. It was the bracelet. The pearl bracelet on Nia's left wrist. The one her late mother had given her the Christmas before she passed. The one Nia touched every morning like a prayer. The one she wore to funerals, job interviews, court hearings for clients, and the first apartment showing after she and Deshawn moved out of their old place. The silk thread gave way when the bowl struck her arm. Eat snapped. Small white pearls scattered across the linen tablecloth like dropped teeth. They rolled in every direction. Some landed near wine glasses. Some fell off the edge of the table and bounced softly against the hardwood floor. One pearl rolled all the way down the table and stopped beside Beverly's plate. Beverly looked at it. She did not pick it up. The sound sat 2 seats away from his wife. He looked at Nia, her dress soaked and clinging to her chest, her skin reddening from the heat, her dead mother's bracelet broken and scattered across his mother's table. He leaned slightly toward her and muttered, "You had that coming." Nobody gasped louder than the silence that followed those words. It filled the room from floor to ceiling. It pressed against the walls. It sat in every chair. It rested on every plate, every glass, every untouched spoonful of soup. A candle near the centerpiece snapped softly as wax ran down its side. Nia did not stand. She did not cry. She did not raise her voice or clench her jaw or push back from the table. She reached for her napkin, pressed it slowly against her collarbone where the broth had landed, and then set down her spoon with the kind of care a person uses when placing something fragile on a shelf. Then she turned her head, not fast, not slow, and glanced toward the kitchen doorway. No one followed her gaze. No one else looked in that direction. But the faintest shift crossed Nia's face. Not anger. Not grief. Something closer to confirmation. Like a woman who had been waiting for a specific moment and had just watched it arrive exactly as expected. She folded the napkin and placed it beside her plate. And she stayed seated. 3 years before that dinner, Nia had stood in a small apartment kitchen, stirring garlic into olive oil while rain hit the window above the sink. The apartment was barely 600 square feet. 1 bedroom. 1 bathroom. A kitchen so narrow 2 people could not stand side by side without touching elbows. The refrigerator made a knocking sound at night. The radiator hissed every time the heat came on. The cabinets were old, painted white by someone impatient, and 1 drawer stuck unless Nia pulled it at exactly the right angle. But it was warm. It smelled like something homemade. And the man walking through the front door with a tired smile and a bag slung over his shoulder made it feel like enough. Dejan had just finished a 12-hour shift at a financial consulting firm downtown, where he was still the youngest analyst on the floor and the lowest paid person in meetings where older men used words like trajectory and upside as if they owned the future. His tie was loosened. His shoes were scuffed at the toes. His eyes were tired but bright when he saw Nia. He dropped his bag by the door, walked straight to her, kissed her forehead, and said, "One day, I'm going to buy you a kitchen twice this size." Nia laughed and handed him the wooden spoon. "Start by stirring this one." He did. Badly. He let the garlic darken too much because he was busy telling her about a senior advisor who had complimented his market summary. Nia bumped him gently with her hip, took the spoon back, and rescued the pan before dinner became smoke and regret. Those were the years when love felt simple because survival required teamwork. They had met at a community fundraiser in the basement of Mount Olive Baptist Church. Nia was 26, working as a social worker and organizing resource packets for single mothers in the neighborhood. She had been kneeling behind a folding table, taping shut a box of pamphlets, when a man in a pressed white shirt walked over and asked where the coffee was. He did not introduce himself first. He did not try to be charming. He just asked about the coffee. Something about the plainness of that question made her smile. "Burnt, probably," she said, pointing toward a silver urn near the wall. The sound had come to drop off a donation check from his firm. He stayed for 3 hours. He helped fold packets. He carried boxes to cars. He listened while Nia explained the after-school program she was trying to build for girls whose mothers worked nights. He asked real questions. Not the kind men ask while waiting to speak again, but questions that had weight. At the end of the night, he asked for her number, not with confidence, but with the nervousness of a man who actually cared about the answer. Nia liked that. She liked that he looked relieved when she said yes. They built their life slowly, brick by brick, the way people do when they do not have shortcuts and do not expect them. Nia picked up weekend shifts at a woman's shelter so Deshaun could study for his Series 7 licensing exam without worrying about rent falling behind. She drove him to testing centers an hour outside the city on Saturday mornings, sitting in the parking lot with a book and a thermos of coffee while he sat inside trying to change their future. She packed his lunches in brown paper bags with small notes folded inside. Jewel already passed. The paper just doesn't they caught up yet. Don't forget to eat the apple. I'm proud of you before the result. When he passed, when the email came through and he stood in their narrow kitchen with his phone shaking in his hand, Nia threw him a surprise dinner at her best friend Layla's apartment. Nothing expensive. Nothing fancy. A pot of baked ziti, a bowl of salad, cheap sparkling cider, and a sheet cake from the bakery on MLK Boulevard with his name misspelled. Congrats, Desaun. Everyone laughed. Desaun laughed hardest. Nia stood in the doorway watching him with the kind of quiet pride that never needs to announce itself because it lives in the body, not the mouth. Those were the years they were closest. The years when money was tight, but the apartment felt full. The years when Deshaun came home exhausted and fell asleep on the couch with his shoes still on, and Nia unlaced them one by one and draped a blanket over him without waking him. They did not have much, but what they had was built together, and every wall of it carried both their fingerprints. Then the money started coming. Not all at once. Money rarely corrupts all at once. It arrives with reasonable explanations. Better shoes for work. A nicer car because clients notice. New restaurants because networking matters. A bigger apartment because they deserve it after all the sacrifice. Desaun got promoted. His name moved up the wall at the firm. His salary crossed a line that made people treat him differently. He bought new suits, darker and sharper than the old ones. He started using words like positioning and alignment at dinner. He stopped asking what movie Nia wanted to watch and started talking about investment portfolios, client dinners, and how image mattered in rooms where real money moved. Somewhere between the second raise and the third, a door opened that had been closed for years. Beverly came back. Desaun's mother had been distant during the lean years. She did not call much. She did not visit. She did not send birthday cards or ask how they were managing. When Nia and Deshaun got married in a small courthouse ceremony followed by chicken wings at Layla's apartment, Beverly attended in a cream suit, smiled for photos, and left before dessert. But when Desaun's name appeared in a firm newsletter and his income became something worth mentioning, Beverly arrived at their apartment door with a casserole dish, a smile, and opinions about everything. She complimented the apartment, but suggested it was too small for a man of Desaun's potential. She praised Nia's cooking, but wondered aloud whether Desaun's colleagues might expect something more refined at a dinner party. She called Nia sweet. Sweet. A word that sounded like a demotion every time Beverly said it. "C'est sweet," Beverly told one of her friends over the phone while standing in Nia's living room, as if Nia were not 3 feet away folding laundry. Very simple. Grounded. That can be useful for a man under pressure. Useful. Nia folded a towel slowly and said nothing. At first, Deshaun brushed it off. "That's just he said. She don't mean anything by it." But slowly, the way water wears grooves into stone, Beverly's words started showing up in Desaun's mouth. It told Nia she needed to dress differently for firm events. It said her shoes looked basic. It stopped eating the lunches she packed because a colleague had joked about the brown paper bag. He started correcting her grammar in front of people even though Nia spoke perfectly well and knew exactly when he was performing intelligence instead of using it. It began looking at her the way a man looks at a piece of furniture he has outgrown but has not replaced yet. Nia noticed. She always noticed. She watched her husband change the way a gardener watches a shift in weather. Not with panic, but with the steady awareness that something cold was moving in. Then came the phone calls. Late that night, after Nia had gone to bed, Deshaun would step onto the balcony and slide the glass door shut behind him. Sometimes she could hear him laughing through the wall. A different laugh. Lighter. Quicker. The kind of laugh people save for someone new because the old person knows too much. One morning, she found a receipt in the pocket of his sport coat. A steakhouse downtown. 2 and 3. 2 glasses of wine. 1 dessert shared. Nia stared at it for 10 seconds. Then she took a photograph with her phone and slid the receipt back into his pocket without leaving a crease. 2 weeks later, Beverly visited on a Sunday and handed Deshaun a new wristwatch. A gift, she said, from someone who believes in your future. The watch was expensive. Gold-toned. Heavy. Leather band. Deshaun turned it over in his hands, pleased in a way that made Nia's stomach tighten. On the back was an engraving. A single initial. C. Not B for Beverly. Not N for Nia. C. A letter that did not belong to anyone in their family. Nia looked at it for 3 slow seconds. Then she touched the clasp on her mother's pearl bracelet, felt it hold, and walked to the kitchen to make tea. Something was growing inside that house. Something Nia could not name yet but could feel in every room. In the way Deshaun angled his phone screen away. In the way Beverly smiled too widely when she visited. In the way the bed felt wider at night even though nobody had moved. And the worst part was this, the thing Nia carried alone and never said aloud. She already knew what was happening. She just did not know how deep it went. The truth arrived at 2 in the morning on a quiet Tuesday. Not with a fight. Not with a slammed door. Not with the kind of explosive discovery people imagine when they think of betrayal. It came with the soft blue glow of a laptop screen left open on the kitchen counter while the rest of the house slept. Nia had gotten up for a glass of water. Her feet were bare on the cold tile. The apartment was dark except for that single rectangle of light coming from the counter. The sound's email was open. The screen had not gone to sleep yet. She was not looking for anything. She had walked past that counter 1,000 times without glancing down. Back on this night, at this hour, the first line of text caught her eye and stopped her body mid-step. It was a message from someone named Camille. Subject line, can't wait for Saturday. The body of the email was 3 paragraphs long, written in the familiar, unhurried tone of a woman who was not new. This was not a first message. This was not flirtation finding its footing. This was a woman writing to a man she had been seeing for a long time with the comfort and ease of someone who believed she had already been chosen. Nia set the glass of water down on the counter. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. Then she scrolled. 11 months of messages. Long paragraphs full of plans, pet names, inside jokes, photographs taken in places Nia had never been. Camille sent selfies from hotel bathrobes, restaurant booths, and once from the front seat of the Sounds car, the same car Nia had co-signed the loan for. She wrote about an apartment she was looking at. She asked when the situation at home would finally be resolved. She used the word we the way married people do, casually and possessively, like the future was already decided. Nia's chest tightened. Her throat burned with something that had no name. The kitchen clock ticked above the refrigerator, and each second sounded louder than the one before. But she did not cry. She kept scrolling. That was when the second wound opened. Deeper. Quieter. Far more devastating than the first. Forwarded threads between Deshaun and Beverly. 7 months of them. Beverly had not just known about Camille. She had introduced them. Beverly had arranged the dinner where they met. Beverly had coached Deshaun through the early weeks, telling him how to manage Nia's feelings while he explored what God really intended for him. Beverly had sent Camille's photo before they ever met with a message that read, "This is the kind of woman who matches your future." And in one email, the one that made Nia's fingers go white against the counter, Beverly had written, "Camille understands your world. Nia never will." Nia stood in that kitchen for a long time. The refrigerator hummed. The clock ticked. Her husband slept in the next room. His mother's words floated on the screen like poison in still water. Nia had expected another woman. Some part of her had known about Camille before Camille had a name. But Beverly? Beverly arranging it. Beverly blessing it. Beverly building the bridge between her son and his mistress, then crossing it with flowers in her hands. That was different. That was not betrayal slipping through a crack. That was betrayal with architecture. Then Nia moved. She pulled out her phone and, with hands that trembled only slightly, screenshotted every email, every thread, every forwarded message. She organized them by date. She saved them in a folder she titled with one word. Enaug. The next afternoon, Nia drove to Beverly's house to return a casserole dish. She held it in both hands as she walked up the brick path to the front door, her face arranged in the pleasant neutral expression she had learned to wear around her mother-in-law like armor. Beverly's house sat on a quiet street lined with old trees and expensive silence. Waites chatters. Ballast brass knocker. Porch planters. Beverly changed every season to make sure neighbors knew she had taste in time. Beverly opened the door before Nia rang twice. Nia, she said warmly, as if warmth had ever cost her anything. Come in, sweetheart. Sweetheart. Another word that sounded like a small cage. Beverly poured coffee into good cups. Not mugs. Cups. Fine porcelain with blue flowers along the rim. She set a sugar bowl on the kitchen table and talked about the annual family dinner she was planning for the following month. I need you to bring a side dish, Beverly said. Something simple. You're good at simple. Nia smiled. I can do that. When Beverly stepped onto the back porch to take a phone call, Nia's eyes moved to the refrigerator door. There, held in place by a small floral magnet, was a photograph. Desaun and Camille standing together outside a restaurant. Shoulders touching. Smiling. Comfortable. Like a couple. On Beverly's refrigerator. This blood-like family. Nia stared at the photograph for a long, still moment. The second wound did not bleed the way the first one had. It burned slower, deeper, because an affair was one kind of betrayal. But knowing that the woman who was supposed to be her mother-in-law had built the whole thing from the ground up, had printed the blueprint, poured the concrete, decorated the rooms, and invited the mistress into the family before the wife had even been told she was being removed, that was something else entirely. Nia sat back down at the kitchen table. When Beverly returned from her call, Nia smiled and said the coffee was wonderful. That night, after Deshaun fell asleep, Nia locked the bathroom door, sat on the edge of the tub, and called her father. Jorge Walter Hendricks picked up on the second ring. He did not sound surprised. He rarely did. Daddy, Nia said quietly. I need you to see something. But not yet. When I tell you, you'll know when. Walter was silent for 3 full seconds. Then he said, "Ella be ready." Nia closed her eyes. The relief nearly broke her. Walter did not ask what had happened. He did not demand names. He did not tell her to calm down or come home immediately or confront anyone before she had a plan. Walter Hendricks had spent 32 years on the federal bench. He knew how to wait for evidence. He knew the danger of acting before the record was complete. But more than that, he knew his daughter. If you are in danger, he said, you leave tonight. I am not in danger. Are you sure? Nia looked toward the bathroom door, beyond which Deshaun slept in their bed as if peace had not expired beneath the same roof. No, she admitted. But I am not leaving yet. Walter's voice softened. Then we do this your way. Carefully. Nia hung up, looked at herself in the bathroom mirror for a long time, then opened the door and went to bed beside a man who had no idea what was coming. The next 3 weeks moved like water under ice. Perfectly still on the surface. Relentless underneath. Nia visited a divorce attorney named Patricia Cole, a woman with reading glasses on a chain, silver rings on both hands, and 30 years of family law behind her. Patricia's office smelled like leather, old paper, and rain because the windows leaked slightly near the sill and she refused to move offices after 2 decades in the same room. Nia sat across from her wide mahogany desk and placed down a folder thick enough to make a sound. Screenshots printed in color. Financial records highlighted in yellow. Email threads stapled in chronological order. A record of the joint account between Deshaun and Camille. Transfers from Beverly's personal checking account. Small withdrawals from household funds that Deshaun had redirected without Nia's knowledge. Restaurant receipts. Hotel confirmations. A photo of the watch with the engraved C. A copy of the photograph from Beverly's refrigerator. Patricia reviewed everything for nearly 2 hours. She read slowly. Made notes in the margins. Asked clarifying questions in a voice that never rose above conversational. 11. She removed her glasses and sat very still, staring at Beverly's email about Camille matching Desaun's future. When she finished, Patricia pressed the glasses against her lips, rubbed the bridge of her nose, and looked at Nia the way a doctor looks at someone who has done their own diagnosis correctly. You've done the work already, Patricia said. You have more than enough. Nia did not smile. I need everything prepared quietly. No filings. No notifications. Nothing that reaches Deshawn or Beverly before I say. Patricia studied here. You're waiting for something. Yes. Should I ask? No. Patricia nodded once. Then I won't. But I will say this. Evidence gives you options. Anger makes people use them badly. You seem angry, but not reckless. Nia looked down at her mother's bracelet. I'm past reckless. Patricia began drafting. Legal separation paperwork. Divorce filings. A request for temporary exclusive use of the marital home. Preservation notices. Financial disclosures. A draft complaint regarding dissipation of marital funds. A custody plan for Nia and the sound's 7-year-old daughter, Maya, who still believed her father's late nights were about work and her grandmother's coldness was just grown-up manners. Maya was the part Nia handled most carefully. She did not tell her daughter adult truths. Not yet. But she started preparing the ground beneath her feet. On school mornings, she lingered longer at the door. Do you know what to do if grown-ups argue? Nia asked one Friday while brushing Maya's curls into 2 puffs. Maya looked at her in the mirror. Go to my room? If you're home, yes. If you're somewhere else, you find me or Grandpa Walter. Is somebody going to argue? No, baby. I just want you to know where safe is. Maya accepted that the way children accept strange instructions from parents they trust. She nodded, then asked if she could wear the glitter sneakers with her uniform. Nia said yes. Some battles did not matter. Others mattered more than breath. Nia continued going through household finances with the attention of a woman who had always paid the bills while her husband spent. She discovered the transfers to Camilla's joint account were small. 200 here. 350 there. 400 on a Friday. Amounts designed to disappear inside the noise of grocery runs, electric bills, school expenses, and pharmacy charges. But Nia had always been the one who balanced their household books. She had always been the one who noticed when numbers did not sit right. She found every single transfer. Printed every receipt. Added them to the folder, which grew thicker by the day. Then Beverly told her about the annual dinner. She did it on a phone call like an afterthought, which meant she had been planning the delivery for days. I invited a friend of the sounds, Beverly said. Thought it would be nice to bring some fresh energy to the table. Nia stood in the laundry room with a basket of towels pressed against her hip. Camille? A small silence. Then Beverly laughed lightly. Oh, you know her. I know of her. Well, good. Then it won't be awkward. Nia stared at the dryer door and watched her own face reflected faintly in the metal circle. No, she said. It won't be. She could hear the pride in Beverly's voice. The sound of a woman who believed her plan was unfolding exactly as designed. That sounds lovely, Nia said. And she meant it. Just not the way Beverly thought. That evening, Nia called Walter. The dinner is Saturday the 12th, she said. I need you to come early. Use the back door. What in the kitchen? Don't let anyone see you. Walter did not ask why. He did not ask who would be there. He did not ask a single question a federal judge with 32 years on the bench already knew how to answer from context. He simply said, what time should I arrive? In the days that followed, Deshawn moved through the house like a man who believed he was untouchable. He bought Camille a gold necklace and left the receipt on top of the dresser as if it did not matter. He told Nia she should make more of an effort to be pleasant at dinner because Beverly's guests would be watching. He selected her outfit for the evening, laying a plain gray dress across the bed like a suggestion wrapped in control. Nia looked at the dress. Then at him. I already have something. He frowned. Don't make it difficult. The old Nia would have asked what he meant. The old Nia would have explained herself, defended her choice, tried to find peace in the small space between insult and argument. This Nia only said, I heard you. That unsettled him. Not enough. Bat slightly. Beverly called 2 days before the dinner. Wear something nice for once, she said. No pretense. No softness. Used a woman who had stopped pretending she respected her daughter-in-law. Nia sat at the kitchen table with Patricia's folder open in front of her. I will, she said. Her voice was so steady it could have balanced glass. Every night that week, after Deshawn fell asleep, Nia sat alone at the kitchen table. She did not rehearse speeches. She did not plan dramatic lines or imagine confrontations. She just read through the evidence one more time, closed the folder, pressed her thumb against the pearl bracelet on her wrist, and turned off the light. What she was building did not need rage. It did not need shouting. It needed truth. And a room full of people willing to hear it. The night of Beverly's annual dinner, Nia walked through the front door wearing her navy blue dress and her mother's pearl bracelet, carrying herself with a stillness that made people look twice. Her back was straight. Her chin was level. Her hands did not fidget. She moved through Beverly's foyer like a woman who had already decided something and was simply waiting for the clock to catch up. Beverly greeted her at the door with warmth that did not reach her eyes. You look nice tonight, she said, scanning Nia's outfit the way a woman scans an arrival she does not consider an entrance. It was the first compliment she had offered Nia in over a year. It tasted like strategy. The dining room was set for a celebration Beverly believed was hers. 25 place settings arranged along the long mahogany table. With the linen pressed without a crease. Tall tapered candles burning steadily in silver holders. Beverly's best china, the set she kept locked behind glass doors 11 months of the year and brought out only when she wanted the room to remember who was in charge. Guests arrived in waves. Cousins who drove in from across the city. Aunts carrying foil-covered dishes balanced on their palms. Uncles who shook hands too hard and laughed too loudly. Old neighbors who had known Deshawn since he was small enough to ride a bicycle with training wheels down the block. Maya was not there. That was one thing Nia had made sure of. She had sent her daughter to Layla's house for a sleepover with pizza, movies, and strict instructions that no adult except Nia, Layla, or Walter was allowed to pick her up. Layla had not asked many questions. She had known Nia since college and understood that some friends do not need explanation before they become shelter. Camille arrived last. On Beverly's arm. She wore a red dress and teardrop earrings that caught the candlelight with every turn of her head. Her hair fell in glossy waves over one shoulder. Her lipstick was soft pink, almost innocent, which somehow made the cruelty in her eyes look sharper. Beverly seated her directly across from Nia. Deliberately. Precisely. Like placing a chess piece. And this, Beverly announced, is Camille. This sounds very dear friend. The word dear landed like a stone dropped into still water. The energy shifted. A few of the older aunts exchanged looks across the centerpiece. Uncle Lionel set his glass down with deliberate slowness. Cousin Tasha stared at her napkin and said nothing. But in Beverly's house, Beverly controlled the atmosphere and nobody challenged her whether. Not tonight. Not yet. Nia smiled at Camille. She complimented her earrings. She passed the bread basket. She asked Beverly about the soup recipe. And with every calm word, every graceful gesture, something in the room tightened, though nobody could name what it was. Deshawn watched his wife from 2 seats away and found he could not read her. She was not cold. She was not tense. She was something he had not seen in a long time. Composed in a way that did not seem defensive. It seemed chosen. A glanced at Beverly. Beverly returned the look with a slight crease between her eyebrows. They had both expected something different. Tensión. Jealousy. A crack in Nia's armor that would make the room see her as fragile. Instead, Nia was the calmest person at the table. Behind the half-closed kitchen door, Walter Hendricks stood with his arms folded across his chest. It had arrived 40 minutes earlier through the back entrance, let in by Nia herself before the first guest arrived. He stood in the shadows of the kitchen and watched through the gap in the door. He saw his daughter's composure. He saw the woman in the red dress. He saw Deshawn lean back in his chair with the carelessness of a man who believed he had already won. Walter said nothing. He simply watched because that was what his daughter had asked him to do. Dinner vegan. Soup first. Tomato bisque served in Beverly's white bowls with the gold rim. Steam curled from each bowl. Spoons touched china. Polite conversation rose and fell. Someone mentioned gas prices. Someone else talked about a nephew applying to college. Beverly presided from the head of the table, smiling with the satisfaction of a woman who believed every chair, every plate, every silence belonged to her. Then Camille leaned forward. You know, she said, eyes on Nia, some women just don't know when a man has outgrown them. The spoon in Uncle Lionel's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. Nia looked at Camille. Not with surprise. Not with fear. Just looked. Camille's smile twitched. She had wanted more. A gasp. A trembling lip. A demand that Deshawn defend his wife. Nia gave her nothing. So Camille picked up the soup bowl. And threw it. It. Pain. Silence. Pearls scattering across linen. Deshawn's voice, low and cruel. You had that coming. Then Nia picked up a single pearl from the tablecloth. She held it between her thumb and forefinger and studied it the way a jeweler studies a stone. Not with emotion. With calm assessment. A woman deciding what something is worth. Then she set it gently beside her glass. She looked at Deshawn. Are you finished? The words were so quiet that guests at the far end of the table leaned forward in their chairs. Beverly's smile vanished. Camille stepped back from the table. Deshawn's jaw tightened because for the first time in 3 years, he could not predict what his wife was about to do next. One of the older aunts near the window turned to her husband and whispered, something ain't they right. She had no idea how right she was. Nia stood from her chair the way a woman stands when she has been carrying something unbearable for a very long time and has finally decided to set it down. There was no force in the movement. No drama. She rose, and the room went still. She reached for her purse, which had been hanging on the back of her chair the entire evening, and pulled out a clear plastic folder. Inside there were printed pages, emails, bank records, screenshots, and one photograph. She placed the folder in the center of the table next to the bread basket and the dish of softened butter. The contrast between the ordinary and the devastating made the air in the room feel thin. I didn't they come here to fight, she said. Her voice carried to every corner of the dining room. I came here so everyone at this table could see the truth. Deshawn stared at the folder but did not touch it. His hands lay flat on the table, fingers slightly spread, as if bracing for something he could not yet see. Nia opened the folder herself. The first page was Beverly's email. Camille understands your world. Nia never will. Nia read the line aloud. Not with venom. Not with tears. With the flat, steady tone of someone reading a fact into evidence. Beverly pushed back from the table and stood. That is private correspondence, she said, voice shaking at the edges. You had no right. Nia turned toward her. You had no right, she said, to bring your son's mistress into your home and seat her across from your son's wife. But here we are. Nobody moved. The candles flickered. A glass of sweet tea sweated onto the tablecloth, and nobody wiped it. Nia turned to the next page. Bank statements showing the joint account between Deshawn and Camille. Deposits tracked by date and amount. Transfers originating from Beverly's personal checking account. Transfers from Deshawn's household account. Receipts from restaurants, hotels, jewelry stores. 11 months of proof arranged so cleanly that no denial could find a place to stand. She slid the page toward the center of the table so the nearest guests could see the numbers clearly. Camille's expression collapsed. She looked at Deshawn for rescue. Deshawn looked at Beverly. Beverly looked at the table. The triangle of their guilt rotated in silence, each one searching for a door and finding none. Nia picked up the photograph from Beverly's refrigerator and laid it on the table. Deshawn and Camille outside the restaurant. Shoulders touching. Comfortable. Displayed in Beverly's kitchen like a family portrait. Aunt Lorraine, Beverly's older sister, leaned forward and saw it first. Her face changed. Beverly, she whispered. Not loudly. Not theatrically. But with the kind of disgust only family can put into a name. Beverly's throat worked. I was trying to help my son. Nia looked at her. No. You were trying to replace me. Beverly opened her mouth. Nia continued before she could speak. You did not just know about the affair. You arranged it. You encouraged it. You funded parts of it. You brought her here tonight because you wanted me humiliated in front of this family before he filed for divorce. A ripple moved through the table. The sound stood. Enough. The word came out sharp, but his face had lost authority. Nia turned to him slowly. You're right, she said. Enough. Then came the voice from behind them all. I've seen enough. Every head in the dining room turned toward the kitchen doorway. Walter Hendricks stepped through it the way he had stepped into courtrooms for 32 years. Unurried. Upright. Carrying the gravity that made the room feel smaller around him. It was tall, gray at the temples, wearing a dark jacket and a white shirt buttoned at the collar. His face carried no anger. Only certainty. Several guests recognized him immediately. The Sound's uncle half rose from his chair. Aunt Lorraine pressed one hand against her mouth. Because Walter was not simply Nia's father. It was Judge Walter Hendricks, retired from the federal bench, a man whose name had weight in every room that had ever heard it spoken. He did not raise his voice. He never had to. I have been standing in that kitchen for 45 minutes, Walter said. I watched a woman throw boiling soup at my daughter. He heard a husband tell his burned wife that she deserved it. And I watched a mother sit in her chair and do nothing while it happened. The room held perfectly still. Walter looked at Camille. You assaulted my daughter in front of witnesses. Camille's lips parted. It wasn't they. Do not speak while I am speaking. She stopped. It turned to Deshawn. His disappointment was so deep it did not need volume. You allowed another woman to burn your wife at your mother's table, and your first instinct was not concern. It was contempt. Deshawn's face tightened. Judge Hendricks. Mr. Whitaker, Walter said, and the use of his last name made Deshawn look suddenly young. You will be hearing from my daughter's attorney. And from me. He looked at Beverly last. That was the hardest part. Because Beverly tried to lift her chin, tried to gather the old command she had used for years, tried to make herself bigger inside the dining room she controlled. It did not work. Walter's voice dropped slightly. Mr. Whitaker, I have spent a career watching people convince themselves cruelty becomes acceptable when they call it family. It does not. Beverly sat down. Slowly. As if her knees had gone weak. Nia stood very still. She looked down at the tablecloth. The pearls from her mother's bracelet were still scattered across the linen. So many near plates. So many caught in the folds of napkins. One still resting near Beverly's hand. Nia began picking them up one by one. Slowly. Carefully. Not all of them were there. Some had rolled to the floor and disappeared under the table. Some had cracked. Some were simply gone. But the ones she found, she gathered into her closed palm. Then she looked at Deshawn one final time. She did not say another word. She turned and walked toward the front door. Walter followed. 25 dinner guests sat in the kind of silence that stays in a room long after people leave. Outside, the night air was cold against Nia's wet dress. The burn across her chest throbbed steadily now. Pain had become clearer once the performance ended. Her skin pulsed beneath the fabric. Her throat tightened, and for the first time all evening, her eyes filled. Walter removed his jacket and placed it gently around her shoulders. Hospitale, he said. I am okay. You are burned. I know. And you are in shock. Nia looked up at him. I didn't they cry. Walter's face softened. Crying is not the test. That was all it took. One sentence. One safe person. Nia's breath broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. It left her in a small, wounded sound she had been holding for months. Walter opened the passenger door of his car and helped her inside with the care of someone handling something precious but not fragile. At urgent care, a nurse cleaned the burn while Nia sat on an exam table beneath fluorescent lights that made everything look too real. The nurse was kind in a brisk way. First-degree burns across part of the chest and neck. No severe blistering yet, but the area needed treatment and monitoring. She documented everything. Took photographs with Nia's consent. Brought notice. How did this happen? The nurse asked. Nia looked at Walter. Walter waited. My husband's girlfriend threw soup on me at my motorin labese dinner, Nia said. The nurse's face did not change much. But her pen paused. I'm going to include that exactly as stated. Thank you. By midnight, Nia was at Layla's house, standing in the guest bathroom with a clean oversized sweatshirt hanging from her shoulders. Layla sat on the edge of the tub crying harder than Nia, which somehow made Nia laugh. It's not funny, Layla said, wiping her face. No, Nia said. But your crying face is dramatic. My best friend got soup assaulted by a mistress at a family dinner. I'm allowed drama. Nia sat beside her, and the laughter faded into quiet. Maya slept in the room across the hall, unaware that her life had shifted while she watched cartoons and ate popcorn. Nia held the recovered pearls in a tissue. Layla touched the bundle gently. Your mom's bracelet. Nia nodded. I found most of them. Most is something. Nia looked toward the hallway. It's not all. No, Layla said. But it's enough to rebuild with. The story of that dinner spread through the family the way smoke spreads through a house. Quietly at first. Then everywhere. It did not need embellishment. The facts were heavy enough to carry themselves. Within a week, every cousin, aunt, uncle, neighbor, and church friend who had not been at the table knew what happened. The soup. The words. The bracelet breaking. Beverly sitting still. The retired judge stepping out of the kitchen doorway like a man who had been waiting his whole life for that moment. Aunt Lorraine called Walter 2 days after the dinner. I should have stood up sooner, she said. Walter sat at his kitchen table, his reading glasses beside a mug of black coffee. Yes, he said. Lorraine Angel. No one had ever accused Walter of cushioning truth for adults. I know. Then do better next time. She did. Aunt Lorraine became the first person in Beverly's family to call Nia directly. I am ashamed, she said. Not of you. Of Fuese. We let Beverly make silence feel like manners. Nia stood near Layla's kitchen window, watching rain slide down the glass. Thank you for saying that. Is there anything you need? Nia almost said no. Women like her were trained to say no quickly, before need could become visible. Instead, she said, if anyone asks what happened, tell the truth. Lorina's answer was immediate. I will. The sound called Nia 17 times in the first 2 weeks after the dinner. She did not answer a single call. The phone would ring on Layla's kitchen counter while Nia made coffee or folded Maya's school uniform, and she would look at his name on the screen the way a person looks at a door already decided closed. His voicemails began with apologies. His voice cracking. Words stumbling over each other like a man rehearsing sincerity for the first time. Nia, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was going to throw it. Nia, please call me. We need to talk about Maya. Nia, I handled it wrong. Then slowly, message by message, the apologies twisted. You didn't have to do that in front of everybody. You embarrassed my mother. You could have talked to me privately. As if being exposed were somehow a greater injury than 11 months of betrayal. As if privacy had been something he honored when he brought his mistress to his mother's table. Nia saved the voicemails and sent them to Patricia. Patricia responded with one line. Josephine. Do not reply. So Nia did not. The sound drove to the house once on a Thursday evening when the streetlights were just coming on. Nia had already moved herself and Maya temporarily to Layla's, but Patricia had arranged for exclusive use of the marital home pending the hearing. Walter had paid a locksmith to change the locks the day after urgent care. The sound pulled into the driveway, walked to the front door with his shoulders hunched, and slid his key into the lock. It went in halfway. Stop. The tumblers had been changed. His key no longer fit the door to the house he used to live in. It stood on the porch for a long time, hand still wrapped around the knob, forehead nearly touching the wood, staring at the door the way a man stares at something he broke and cannot fix. A neighbor across the street watched from behind her curtain. She did not come outside. There was nothing to say. The legal process began cleanly because Nia had made it clean before anyone else knew there was a process. Patricia Cole filed for divorce, temporary custody, exclusive use of the home, preservation of financial records, and reimbursement for dissipated marital funds. She included medical documentation from urgent care, photographs of the burns, witness statements from 3 dinner guests, bank records, email threads, and the voicemail where Deshawn said Nia embarrassed his mother. Walter's legal connections did not need to pull strings. They did not need to apply pressure. The evidence did what evidence does when arranged properly. It spoke. The Sounds firm launched an internal review. Within 2 weeks, the joint account with Camille, funded partly through household money redirected without Nia's knowledge and partly through Beverly's transfers, raised serious questions about his financial judgment and ethical standing. Partners who had once mentored him requested meetings behind closed doors. Conversations that used to be about his potential now centered on his character. It was not fired immediately. That would have been too neat, and life is rarely neat. Instead, his world narrowed. The invitations to client dinners stopped appearing in his inbox. Senior partners no longer asked for his opinion in meetings. A promotion track quietly disappeared from conversation. Colleagues who once laughed with him near the elevator offered distant nods and kept walking. His name remained on the firm directory, but the meaning beneath it changed. Respect is a kind of credit. The sound had overdrawn his account. Camille disappeared the way a shadow disappears when light shifts. Not all at once. Steadily. When the sound's reputation began to crack, she stopped answering calls. When his finances became uncertain and the joint account no longer felt like a promise but a liability, she closed what she could, withdrew what she could justify, and removed herself from every restaurant reservation, every text thread, every shared plan. She did not fight for him. She did not grieve the relationship. She did not write goodbye. She simply left the way a person leaves a party when the music stops. Quickly. Without looking back. Without apology. Beverly's world shrank faster and more painfully than her son's. Her own sisters, women who had stood beside her through decades of holidays, funerals, hospital visits, and late-night phone calls, stopped returning messages. Aunt Lorraine, who had been seated 4 chairs away when the soup landed on Nia's chest, sent Beverly one text 11 days after the dinner. Mama would have been ashamed of you. Beverly read it, set her phone face down on the counter, and never responded. The Thanksgiving gathering Beverly had hosted without interruption for 15 years moved to Aunt Lorraine's house that November. Beverly's name was not on the guest list. No one called to explain. No one needed to. At church, people still greeted her. But differently. Not rudely. That would have given Beverly something to fight. They were polite. Brief. Careful. The kind of courtesy one offers someone who has become unsafe but not irrelevant enough to ignore. No one asked her to chair the women's luncheon. No one invited her to lead the holiday kitchen committee. When she tried to speak sharply about family privacy during Bible study, an older woman named Mrs. Ellison closed her Bible and said, "Privacy is not where we hide cruelty, Beverly." The room went silent. Beverly did not return the next week. The temporary hearing happened 6 weeks after the dinner. Nia wore a soft gray suit and the pearl bracelet, now rest-strung but not fully restored. The jeweler had done what he could. Each recovered pearl had been cleaned, polished, and threaded onto a new silk cord. The clasp was stronger. The bracelet was shorter. Not all the pearls had survived. Some had rolled under Beverly's table and disappeared into cracks in the hardwood. Some had cracked when they hit the floor. Some were simply gone. But what remained held together. That was enough. The sound sat across the courtroom beside his attorney, looking thinner than Nia remembered. Beverly sat behind him in a black dress and pearls of her own, as if jewelry could argue character. She did not look at Nia. Walter sat behind his daughter. It was not there as a judge. It was there as a father. That mattered more. Patricia presented calmly. She did not perform outrage. She did not need to. She showed the emails. The bank statements. The medical documentation. The witness statements. The voicemails. The judge, a woman with silver hair and a direct gaze, listened without interruption. The Sound's attorney tried to frame the dinner as a regrettable family conflict. Patricia stood. Your Honor, a regrettable family conflict is a disagreement over seating arrangements. This was an assault witnessed by 25 people, followed by documented financial misconduct and an ongoing pattern of emotional cruelty relevant to temporary orders. The judge looked down at the medical photos. Then at Deschamps. I am inclined to agree that family conflict is inadequate. Nia kept her hands folded. The Sound stared at the table. The judge granted Nia temporary exclusive use of the home, primary physical custody pending final agreement, structured visitation, child support, and a financial restraining order preventing unusual transfers. Communication was restricted to a parenting app. Beverly was not to be present during exchanges or discuss the litigation with Maya. Beverly made a sound behind Deschamps. The judge looked up. Mrs. Whitaker, this order concerns the minor child's emotional stability. If you wish to become part of the problem, I can make the language more specific. Beverly went still. Outside the courtroom, Deschamps approached Nia near the elevators. Walter shifted forward. Nia touched his arm lightly. She could stand for herself. The Sound stopped several feet away. You really doing all this? He asked. Nia looked at him. There was a time she would have heard pain in that question and mistaken it for love. Now she heard entitlement grieving its own consequences. You did this, she said. I documented it. His mouth tightened. I never wanted to hurt Maya. No, Nia said. You wanted what you wanted and hoped Maya would not notice the damage. A looked away. I loved you once. Nia's throat tightened. There it was. The line that could have broken her months ago. Once. Not now. Not enough. Not in any way that mattered. I know, she said. That's what made it believable. The elevator arrived. She stepped inside with Walter and Patricia. The Sound did not follow. Recovery did not feel like victory. It felt like paperwork, exhaustion, and learning where the floor was in a house after the furniture had been moved. Nia returned to the marital home for 2 months because Patricia advised it strategically and because Maya needed familiar walls while everything else changed. But the house felt different. Not haunted exactly. More like a room after smoke has cleared, still smelling faintly of fire. She changed the bedroom. New seats. New curtains. New lamp. She moved the bed to the opposite wall because she could no longer sleep in the same angle as before. She boxed the Sound's belongings with Walter's help and placed them in the garage for scheduled pickup. Maya asked questions. Children always do. Why can't Daddy live here? Nia sat with her on the bedroom floor sorting crayons. Because Daddy and I are not going to be married anymore. Maya's face folded. Because he was mean. Nia inhaled slowly. Because he made choices that hurt our family. Did I do something? No. The answer came so fast, so fierce, that Maya looked startled. Nia softened her voice. No, baby. Nothing about this is because of you. Maya leaned into her lap. Are you sad? Yes. Are you mad? Sometimes. Are we safe? Nia wrapped both arms around her. Yes. That became the promise. Not happy every day. Not on earth. Safe. Nia returned to therapy. She had gone years earlier after her mother died, but this time the grief was layered. Her therapist, Dr. Elaine Porter, had kind eyes and a habit of asking questions that sounded simple until they found the locked doors. What did Beverly's approval represent to you? Nia looked out the office window at rain sliding down the glass. Proof that I belonged. And when she withheld it? I worked harder. At what point did working harder become self-erasure? Nia hated that question. Then she wrote it down. Healing came in unglamorous increments. Sleeping 4 hours without waking. Eating breakfast because her body deserved food even when grief said otherwise. Laughing at something Maya said without guilt arriving immediately after. Letting Layla bring groceries without insisting on paying her back that day. Calling Walter just to talk, not because there was a crisis. The divorce proceeded without much contest after the temporary hearing. Deshawn's attorney understood the evidence. So did Deshawn, eventually. The settlement was fair and firm. Nia kept the house initially, then chose to sell it. Not because she had to, but because she wanted a home with no echoes of another woman's name on a laptop screen. The financial agreement accounted for misused marital funds. Deshawn accepted responsibility for certain debts. Custody became structured and predictable. Beverly's access to Maya remained limited and supervised through Deshawn's parenting time, with strict boundaries about what could be discussed. The first time Maya returned from a visit and said, "Grandma Beverly says grown-ups make mistakes and mommy shouldn't they hold grudges," Nia documented it and sent it to Patricia. The next order was clearer. Beverly learned, slowly and bitterly, that control did not work as well when written orders stood in the doorway. One evening in late autumn, after the divorce had been finalized, Deshawn parked outside the old house as the last light of day bled orange along the horizon. The trees on the block had started to turn. Leaves gathered in gutters. The air held the first clean bite of approaching winter. He sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and the windows up, watching the kitchen light flicker on behind the curtain. A shadow moved across the room. Esmal. Familiar. Unurried. A shadow that belonged to a life he had once been part of and had thrown away with both hands. He thought of the old apartment. Nia in the narrow kitchen. Garlic and olive oil. Rain on the window. Brown paper lunches with notes inside. Here sitting in parking lots while he took exams. Here hands unlacing his shoes when he fell asleep on the couch. He thought of the word outgrown. It sounded ridiculous now. He had not outgrown Nia. He had outgrown gratitude. And without gratitude, every blessing had begun to look like furniture. He picked up his phone and opened the parenting app. Tait, can we talk sometime? Not about Maya. About Uese. He stared at the message. Deleted it. Typed again, "I'm sorry." Deleted that too. Because sorry, at that hour, felt like reaching for warmth after burning down the house. He started the engine. Pulled away slowly. The streetlights turned on one by one behind him as he drove. He did not look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing left to see. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning in early spring, Nia sat at a small kitchen table in an apartment that belonged to her and no one else. She had sold the house and used part of the proceeds to pay down debt, put money into Maya's education account, and rent a second-floor walk-up with hardwood floors, tall windows, and enough morning light to make even ordinary coffee feel ceremonial. The kitchen was smaller than the one Deshawn had once promised to buy her. Nia loved it more. Sunlight came through the glass and fell across the table in a warm, slow-moving rectangle. A cup of coffee sat beside her hand, still steaming. The apartment was filled with the kind of quiet that did not need to be filled. Not the heavy quiet of loneliness. The clean, open, breathing quiet of a life taken apart at the seams and rebuilt from the inside out. Nia had returned to social work, but not to the same office or the same role. She now worked with an organization serving women in transitional housing. Women starting over with nothing but a suitcase and a decision. Women who had been told by someone that they were not enough. Women who needed somebody to sit across from them in a fluorescent-lit room and listen without flinching. Twice a week, Nia sat in a circle of folding chairs in a community room and listened to stories that sounded like echoes of her own. She did not give speeches. She did not offer advice unless someone asked. She simply showed up. And showing up was enough. On her left wrist, the pearl bracelet caught the morning light. A jeweler had restrung it carefully. Each recovered pearl cleaned, polished, threaded onto stronger silk. The clasp was new. The thread was stronger. The bracelet was shorter now. Not all the pearls had survived Beverly's table. Some had rolled under chairs and disappeared into the cracks of the hardwood floor. Some had cracked. Some were gone. But what remained held together. Nia ran her thumb across the bracelet the way she used to when her mother was still alive. A small unconscious habit she thought she had lost, now returned to her like something carried in on a quiet tide. Maya came running in from the hallway with a piece of paper in both hands. A crayon drawing of a house with a yellow sun, purple curtains, and two stick figures standing in the yard, both smiling. "Look what I made," Maya said, holding it up with the seriousness of an artist presenting her finest work. Nia took the drawing and held it toward the window. "This," she said, "is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Maya grinned. "You say that every time." "And every time, it's true." She walked to the refrigerator and pinned it up with a small magnet, then stepped back and admired it the way a person admires something that means more than it appears to. Walter arrived at 10 with a paper bag of biscuits and a newspaper tucked under one arm. He knocked even though he had a key, because Walter believed access was not the same as permission. Maya opened the door and threw herself into his arms. "Grandpa, Mommy put my picture on the fridge." "As she should," Walter said gravely. "This is museum-quality work." Maya beamed. Nia poured him coffee. They sat together at the small table while Maya colored on the floor beside them. Walter looked older in the morning light, but softer too. Retirement had taken the robe, not the gravity. His presence still steadied rooms, but around Nia and Maya, he let himself be simply a man who brought biscuits and corrected crossword clues under his breath. "How's the bracelet?" he asked. Nia touched it. "Strong enough." Walter nodded. "Good." A quiet passed between them. Then he said, "Your mother would have been proud." Nia's throat tightened. She would have hated that dinner. Walter smiled faintly. She would have thrown the soup back. Nia laughed so hard Maya looked up from the floor. "What?" "Nothing, baby." Walter's eyes warmed. The laugh stayed in the room after it ended. Not the smile of a woman who had won something. Not revenge. Not vindication. Not proving a point. The laugh of a woman who had walked through something she was not sure she would survive and had come out the other side with dignity in her hands and peace in her chest. That afternoon, after Walter left and Maya went down the hall to play, Nia opened a small wooden box on her dresser. Inside were the pearls that had not fit onto the restaurant bracelet. 3 of them. Slightly damaged. Though cracked to wear safely, but too meaningful to throw away. Nia held them in her palm. For a long time, she had thought healing meant getting everything back. The marriage restored. The bracelet whole. The house quiet in the old way. The life returned to the shape it had before the betrayal. Now she knew better. Healing was not always restoration. Sometimes healing was choosing what could be saved, grieving what could not, and building something honest from what remained. She placed the 3 pearls back in the box and closed the lid. In the kitchen, Maya laughed at something playing on her tablet. Sunlight shifted across the floor. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee, biscuits, laundry detergent, and spring air moving through an open window. Nia stood in the middle of her bedroom and listened. No one was coming home late with lies in his pockets. No one was standing in her kitchen calling her simple. No one was teaching her daughter that love meant shrinking to keep peace at a table designed to humiliate you. Her phone buzzed. A message from Patricia. Final reimbursement payment cleared. Jury officially done. Nia read it twice. Then she set the phone down and exhaled. Doni. The word did not feel like fireworks. It felt like setting down a bag she had carried for miles and only then realizing how badly her shoulders hurt. She walked to the kitchen, took her mother's old recipe card from a drawer, and began making soup. No tomato. Not yet. Chicken and rice with thyme, celery, carrots, and enough black pepper to warm the throat without burning it. Maya wandered in and asked if she could stir. Nia handed her the spoon. Careful, she said. It's hot. Maya stirred with both hands, serious and proud. Nia watched her daughter standing in morning light, safe in a kitchen that belonged to them, and felt the final knot inside her loosened by one small thread. Some people think strength is about how loud you can scream when you are hurt. But sometimes strength is quieter. Sometimes it is a woman sitting still while the room waits for her to break. Sometimes it is gathering pearls from a tablecloth with burned skin beneath your dress. Sometimes it is letting the truth walk into the room on its own, wearing a dark jacket, carrying 32 years of judgment, and saying, "I've seen enough." And sometimes it is 6 months later, in a small apartment full of sunlight, stirring soup with your daughter and realizing the life you thought had ended was only the life you had finally escaped. Nia touched the pearl bracelet on her wrist. Fewer pearls than before. Stronger thread. Enaug.